What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Transfer Show. Welcome back to January Transfer Window News Show. An attempt to bring a little bit of joy and light into what is a gloomy period as an Arsenal fan at the moment. And I think many of us are hoping that the January transfer window can put that right. So in today's video, I'm going to be taking a look at the player that Mikel Arteta really wants. You've heard a lot of speculation about who might be coming in, but this is the one player that Mikel Arteta really wants. A couple of very credible sources. We'll come back to that. But before we do, to bring you the up-to-the-minute news, I'm going straight to the Evening Standard. And this came in just a few hours ago. They reported that Victor Boniface was a player that Arsenal are very seriously interested in. There's no source, there's nothing more than that, but it just says very simply, Victor Boniface has been named as potential option for the Gunners, who must sell before they can buy, and have been tipped to allow Mohamed El Neni to leave this month. So yeah, bit of a spoiler there. Another huge rumour today is that Mohamed El Neni might be on his way. Trabzonspor, one of the clubs that have been linked. Galatasaray as well. And I think that would make perfect sense. It doesn't look like he's going to get a lot of game time for us anyway. But as to this story about Victor Boniface, just a little background. He played really well, Union Saint-Gilloise. He was picked up by Bayer Leverkusen this season. He has scored 10 goals. He is their top scorer, and they are 4 points clear of Bayern in the Bundesliga. So, would be mad, wouldn't it? Now, there may be a release clause. I have seen people talking around about 17 million. It's not clear to me if that's euros or pounds, but it's obviously it's a tiny amount. It would be a real surprise, absolute sickener if it's true and he decides to leave. But there isn't anything behind this in terms of a real source, except that the Standard has, Mark Mayo has stuck his neck out at the Transfer News Live. See, they don't have a better name for theirs than we do. The Arsenal January Transfer Window News Show. Gotta be a name. Come on, guys, help me out. But, so, Victor Boniface, no, I don't see this one. Until there's some more credible sources, I think we can kind of discount it. Dusan Vlahovic of Juventus. Now, there's a lot of people talking about Arsenal's interest in him and how that deal could be done with all kind of make weights. And I think the real problem with this is that there's no actual source for this. There's no indication that there's any contact between the two clubs to discuss this. Vlahovic had a fantastic season for Fiorentina. He could have come to Arsenal. Instead, he chose Juve. It was clear that he wanted to do it at Juve. He had a disappointing first season. And this season started brightly, but it's petered out. He's not scoring anywhere near enough goals to make the Juve fans happy. And so, what a risk. Just smacks of January transfer madness, this one for me, because ultimately, what if we sign him and he plays about as well as he's played at Juve? Doesn't get in the side. He's expensive. He's on the bench. And there's extra pressure because we basically bought a striker who we're not going to be able to sell for the amount of money that we paid for him, and who isn't good enough to play and isn't, a goal getter. Of course, he could come to Arsenal and completely take off where he left off from Fiorentina, but it's so unlikely. I don't think he fits Arteta's style of play. I don't think this is a player we're ever seriously going to be linked with again. So the fact that there's no sources for any of these rumours and no one's actually willing to stick their neck on the line and say they have inside information, there doesn't seem to have been any negotiation between Arsenal and Juve. Arteta's joked about it. He said that they're impossible to deal with. And then, of course, there's a little detail of the fact that Vlahovic himself, whenever asked about it, has said he wants to stay at Juve. He's never shown any interest at all in playing for Arsenal. He could, as I said earlier, have joined Arsenal, but he decided to go to Juve. I think it's not likely that he's agitating for this move. I think this is a non-starter, personally. So, as I promised you, the player that Mikel Arteta really wants this January transfer window, the one he's really pushing for, with a price tag of 53 million, it's Real Sociedad's Martin Zubimendi. Often what I'm looking for is credible sources. People actually stick their neck out and say, I think this is going to happen. And usually if you get one of those, that's pretty good. Fabrizio Romano, usually you can rely on, David Ornstein. So when I looked at this story, it actually is coming from two very credible sources indeed, one of which is David Ornstein. The story is that Martin Zubimendi is Mikel Arteta's perfect midfielder. Now, there could well be some truth to this, because Mikel Arteta has been linked with Zubimendi. When I started this channel last January, he was one of the big talking points, and it's pretty much never left the radar since. I've done videos about it, and one of the key things I always bring up is that Martin Zubimendi doesn't seem to want to leave Sociedad at all. He thinks of it and speaks of it as a family, and I don't think he's in a great rush to leave. So when you see this story come up, it's easy just to kind of discount it. But when you think David Ornstein is a hugely credible journalist with insight into Arsenal, so let's have a look at what he actually says. Speaking on 5, David Ornstein has been discussing the chances of Arsenal signing a new midfielder this month, and he says we may need to see departures for someone else to be brought in. Interestingly, when discussing potential targets, Ornstein named Martin Zubimendi as a player that Arsenal love, although he's not heard anything about that deal progressing recently. Really important point at the end there. He's not heard anything about the deal progressing recently. So to say that Arteta is a huge fan of Martin Zubimendi seems reasonable. I don't know how you'd ever go about disproving that, unless Mikel Arteta in his next press conference comes out and says, who the hell's Martin Zubimendi? Never heard of him. You can all shut up about Martin Zubimendi. I think the chances of him coming are really slim. But it's not just David Ornstein talking about it. It's also Dean Jones, who is a very highly regarded. In fact, he's followed by Ornstein and Fabrizio Romano on his Twitter page. Now, I'm not an active Twitter user, so I haven't looked a lot. And I didn't find where he was talking about this on his own X or Twitter account. Dean Jones has claimed that Mikel Arteta is a big admirer of Martin Zubimendi, and Arsenal's interest in the midfielder is being led by their manager. Speaking about Zubimendi, Jones told Give Me Sport, there's definitely some serious interest in it. It's hard to gauge at the moment what their ranking would be in terms of order of targets, because you've got a few names that they're looking at, and the type of player is clearly that defensive-minded one. It's a bit garbled, that, isn't it? There's definitely some serious interest in it. It's hard to gauge at the moment what their ranking would be in terms of order of targets. That's the whole point, isn't it? If he's definitely some interest in it, he's 78th on our list, then that's not really... There's nothing to make me think that Zubimendi is the player that we would bring in. I think this January transfer window is just going to be a hugely problematic one for the Arsenal. I just don't think we can come out of this any happier. As a fan base, the end of the year was just miserable. The football was really depressing. And we've lost our way a little bit, I think, all of us. The break might just do us good. I think to make the fan base happy, you do need to go out and sign Victor Osimhen and, maybe nothing else. But then there's other elements that, and I've been saying for a while, what about our defensive cover? I just don't think you can make both groups happy. I've read a lot that Mikel Arteta ideally wanted 4 players, and I'm sure he does. If we just don't have the money to buy the players that we need. Let me know in the comments if you can only have one signing, who it would be. And I look forward to hearing your comments. Until tomorrow's January Transfer News Window Show, be lucky and lots of love.